If you're watching this video, it's likely that you have purchased or are thinking about purchasing the Attic Room Box Kit from Bentley House Minis. This video will cover the instructions over the 1/12 scale room box made from cardboard and the 1/24 scale room box made from mat board. I highly suggest you watch through all the instructions for the cardboard room box, even if you're doing the mat board room box in 1/24 scale, because they are very similar and go together in the same way. Any differences in the 1/24 scale room box will be shown at the end of the video. For best results when working with cardboard, you want to keep the moisture content down. You can do this by working with a acetone glue. However, tacky glue, which does have some water moisture in it, will still work. What you need to do is just make sure that when you're gluing something, you lay something flat and heavy on it while it dries so that there is no warping. Specifically for the cardboard kit, you have been provided with poster board templates for the wallpaper because cardboard has a tendency to dimple if you're applying wallpaper straight to the surface. I will explain to you how to put all of that together in this video. If you would like to see how I finish the interior of a room box like this, I will link a video down below in the description that will take you to my Bentley House Minis YouTube page. For this example, I used joint compound to fill the edges and create the ceiling, so that is one option you have. Make sure that if you are using joint compound, that when you sand it, you wear a mask to protect your lungs. If you don't want to use joint compound, there are strips of chipboard to cover the edges provided in your kit. So let's get started. Start by removing all the cardboard sheets from your kit. Use a sharp craft blade to cut through the tabs that are holding each shape in place. We're starting with both pieces marked A from sheets 1 and sheet 2. You will notice that sheet AB has an engraved line on the top of it. You're going to want to glue these pieces together. Before gluing, you may want to clean the cardboard sheets. They are initially cleaned before packaging, but you may find a few bits of extra laser ash once you remove them from the cardboard sheets. I'm going to be using some Fabrifix glue, which doesn't have very much moisture content, but you can also use tacky glue. Just make sure you use a heavy weight once it's glued so that nothing warps. I'm spreading the glue all over the front of piece AA and then gluing piece AB on top so that the engraved dotted lines are visible. Then I'm just adding a little bit of weight to make sure that it dries flat. I'm going to be doing the same thing to pieces B, which should line up exactly to create a double thickness. I'm going to do the same thing for pieces marked C. They will also be a double thick wall. Anytime I am gluing these together, I am putting them under a weight just to make sure they stay flat. For piece D, you will notice that there is a cutout in the center. If you would like there to be a window in the back wall of your attic, go ahead and remove this square. If you do not want there to be a window, leave the square in place and later on you can cover it up with the poster board. Go ahead and glue those together as well to create a double thickness. Let everything dry completely. There are two ways you can use the wallpaper that is provided in this kit. It is actually wallpaper backing made from poster board. All the pieces are cut out exactly to match the wall pieces. Therefore, in theory, you could add all of these pieces before you put the walls together. I highly suggest doing this after you construct the room, but really it's up to you. All you need to do is add your wallpaper to the poster board pieces and then glue them on before constructing the room. Either way you decide, before you move on, you need to cut out the square for the window if you've decided that you do want a window. If you don't want a window, just glue the poster board on top and it will create a smooth surface and hide the engraved line. If you are planning on having a window and have cut out the square, go ahead and set it to the side if you're planning to follow doing the wallpaper at the end of the construction. To start putting the walls up, I am going to be following the dotted lines that are on the base. The dotted lines should all be on the exterior of the walls. I'm starting with pieces B and I'm going to add glue to the bottom. It's really helpful to have something that you can lean the walls against while you're gluing the walls together. I'm lining it up so that the dotted line is just on the outside of wall B. While that is starting to dry, I'm going to add glue to the side of wall D and also to the base. This will help me make sure that wall B that I previously glued is staying up at a 90-degree angle. Wall D goes all the way up against the back of the base. While the glue is drying, I'm adding masking tape just to make sure everything is staying in place. Moving on, I am going to add wall C. This goes on the other side of wall D. To make sure that I'm placing wall C at the correct angle, again, I'm following the engraved dotted line on the base. I'm adding glue anywhere my wall will come in contact with another piece of cardboard. I'm adding more masking tape as I go along just to make sure everything stays in place. This is how the current 3 walls that we just constructed should look. As you can see, D is all the way up against the very back of the base. Moving forward, we're going to be putting together walls E, which is 2 pieces glued together for a double thickness, wall F, which is the same, a double thick wall, and we're going to put together pieces G, which are not going to be a wall, but a ceiling. All of these pieces need to be glued together so that the edges match correctly. I'm going to let those dry under something heavy so they stay straight. Once they're dry, I'm adding piece E up against wall C. I'm also adding wall F so that the shorter side of the wall is up against piece E that I previously glued. This wall will also be at an angle, so make sure you're following along with the dotted lines on the base. When installing piece E, which is the short wall, you may find that you have a gap between the dotted line and the wall. That is fine. It is more important that you line up wall E flush with the exposed cardboard of wall C so that it looks like it is all one flush wall. This will eventually be covered. So if you do have a gap, that is okay. You can still use the dotted line so that you know you have a wall that's going in parallel to the front of the base. This is how the pieces so far should be looking. Now we're going to move on to piece G, as I said, is a ceiling. This will go over the smaller part of the room, or the shorter part of the room. This ceiling will sit on top of walls E and F, and it will go up against wall C, sitting flush with the underside of wall C. There's an opening in that wall, and you want to make sure that it is flush just like we did with the lower part of the wall. This is because later on it will be covered up, and we want to make sure that there are no bumps. Here's how it's looking so far. I'm using plenty of masking tape to make sure everything stays in the right spot while it dries. We're going to be moving forward with the wallpaper now. If you decided to add the wallpaper a little bit later, it's very easy to add on whatever wallpaper you choose. Think of the poster board pieces as backing pieces. Dry fit them into your room so you know which side you need to cover the wallpaper with. This will make sure that you don't end up wallpapering the wrong side of the poster board. I highly suggest doing this part before you add pieces H, which will make up your tall roof. It'll be much easier to reach. I'm going to start adding these pieces one at a time. The back wall poster board piece should fit in just fine without any adjustment. I'm gluing it in place, and anytime I'm able to, I'm adding a weight to make sure everything dries flat. You will notice that the piece that fits wall C is a little bit too big. This is because we covered up one part of it with the wall D. Instead of cutting off the extra that's in the front area, you want to cut off a strip on the back to make sure that it fits. All you're going to need to do is use a pencil and mark off the same width as wall D, which is what is causing the obstruction. Remove that amount from the back of your wallpaper piece, and then it should fit perfectly. You can go ahead and glue that in place. You have the same situation with the piece that goes over wall B. Instead of cutting off the excess you see towards the front of the room, you want to cut it off the back or the side that is closer to wall D. Again, I'm measuring the thickness of wall D and then removing that from my wallpaper. Now it should fit perfectly in place and I can glue it to my wall. Moving forward, we're going to put in the piece that goes up against piece F, and you shouldn't have to cut that in any way. It does look like you might have to cut piece E, but honestly, the width helps because it covers the exposed corrugation from wall C. So these pieces do not need to be adjusted. They are actually helping us by covering up that exposed cardboard corrugation. It also is helpful if you want to tape these two pieces together to make one solid piece. By doing this, when we install it into our room, it's going to cover that cardboard gap that's made between pieces G and E. So when you put it in, you can just push it up into that gap and it completely covers the cardboard gap. You are going to be left with a little extra poster board sticking out in front of piece G. You can go ahead and mark on the front the excess that's sticking out, cut it off, and then permanently glue in and install your wallpaper so that it completely covers that small side room. At this point, all of the interior cardboard corrugation should be covered and concealed. I feel like putting the wallpaper in later at this time, you get a much better coverage for your attic room and a lot less frustration in trying to get the wallpaper to fit. Now we're going to be moving forward with the window. Again, this is easier to install before adding the tall roof. You will have one laser cut sheet that has all the pieces and one piece of clear acetate to act as your glass. We're going to start by cutting out piece A, which is actually two pieces. One of them has a thicker edge and one of them has a thinner edge. The thicker edge is going to be the interior part of your windowsill, and the thinner edge is going to be the exterior part. I highly suggest dry fitting these into place first before gluing them. You may need to adjust the width of your sill. This will depend on how thick the wallpaper was that you installed. If you need to make your sill a little bit thinner because you just put in one layer of thin wallpaper, you may have to cut off a small piece of the inner edge so that it fits snug against the exterior of your attic room. You may have a small gap in your sill, and that is okay because we will be installing the windows over it later, and that will conceal it. This is how it's looking once it's installed. Next, we're going to remove one of the B pieces and the piece marked C. I'm gluing C on top of B to make a stair-step effect. This is going to be the trim that's going underneath your window sill. I'm gluing it right underneath the sill, and then I'm removing the other piece B from the mat board sheet, and then I'm adding it underneath the exterior sill. You can also do this at a later time if you want to do some kind of exterior on your attic room. I'm now removing both pieces marked D and piece E. These are going to make up the interior frame on the inside of the window, covering up the corrugation. The D's go on either side and E goes on the top. Now I'm removing a piece marked F, a piece marked G, and one piece marked H. This is going to make the framing that goes up against the wallpaper or up against the exterior wall. Glue one of the F pieces just on top of the sill, making sure that it covers up the interior frame. Glue a G piece in the opposite direction, and then glue H on top to make sure the angled pieces come together to complete the exterior frame. You're going to do the same thing on the inside of the room as well. They go together the exact same way. Now we're moving on to the actual window. You can create this as one permanently closed pane, or you can make it as two panes and glue one of them open. In this example, I'm making the window permanently shut. I'm taking the two mat board pieces and the thinner interior piece, they're touching each other, and I'm going to glue that onto the face of the acetate, trying not to get too much glue on the plastic because it's a little bit difficult to get off. I'm going to let that dry and then flip it over. I'm removing the other pieces and gluing them so that they are exactly the same but on the other side. If you want to have your window open, just do these separately so you have two separate window panes that you can glue in an open or closed position. I'm removing the excess plastic. I'm just using the scrap mat board to give myself a better way to cut through the plastic, and then I'm going to be gluing that inside the frame. It should fit perfectly. Once the window's installed, it will cover up that gap that was left in the sill that we earlier installed. There are J pieces that are left remaining in the mat board. These are optional. If you are wanting a very dark, contrasty interior and you see any bits of light shining through the gaps between the window and the frame, you can use these pieces to line those areas. It just looks like you have a little bit more of a detailed frame. Those are optional and can be discarded if you don't need them. We're now removing both pieces marked H. These are going to make the tall ceiling. You need to put the two longest sides together. Use masking tape to tape them together so it has a bit of a hinged effect. Then flip them over, and this is going to help you drape the roof on top of the point that is on piece D. This will help you get the roof in place and you won't have to be messing with the two sides separately. I'm adding glue anywhere the roof is going to touch the top of the walls, and then I am going to hold that in place with a few more bits of masking tape while the glue takes hold. I saved this part of the construction to the end because once you add this, there is reduced light and reduced area to move your hand around inside the room box. So keep that in mind while you're constructing. You can add the roof whenever you want, but I found that this is the easiest time to do it. You will also notice in your kit you have these chipboard strips. There are small, large, and medium strips all contained in one sheet. These are used to cover the exposed corrugation left by the cardboard after construction. We're going to start with the medium-sized strips. These are going to be covering any walls that are a double thickness. You only need to cover walls once you have constructed the room. If you cover them beforehand, you will run out of the chipboard strips and you will most likely be frustrated with construction because it will throw off the sizes of your walls. I'm laying the strip on top of the double thick wall, cutting it to size, and then gluing it in place so that it covers any exposed corrugation. The medium-size chipboard strips will cover all of the exposed corrugation for any double thick walls. I'm going to be using the thinner strips to cover the front and back of the ceiling area. These are just a single thickness, so that's why you need the thinner strips. The thick strips are going to be covering the top and sides of your roof. To prepare these, I'm adding a little mark in the center long ways of this strip, and I'm using a ruler to connect this, and I'm just going to score the center of this. Scoring means I'm not cutting all the way through. This makes it a little easier for me to fold this piece so that it can cover the gap in the connection of my roof. I'm going to add this onto the top of my roof, mark it with a pencil to make sure that it is the correct size, cut it to size, and then glue it in place. This will keep any light from shining through my roof, and it creates a better glue bond so that the roof is stronger. There are 3 of these pieces in total, 1 for the center peak and 2 for the sides of the roof. You will notice that you have extra small strips. These can be used as baseboards or to cover any gaps that you don't like once the roof is installed. That is up to you. And that is the completed room box in 1/12 scale made from cardboard. And this is how it's looking once everything is covered. I hope you enjoy putting all of the extra details inside the room. Now we'll go over the similarities and differences between the 1/12 and the 1/24 scale kit. So if you purchased this one, you'll want to keep watching. The walls of the 1/24 scale kit are made from mat board instead of cardboard, and the window is made from chipboard. However, it goes together mostly the same. You will see on the base there is engraved dotted lines, and all the walls that were glued together previously need to go together the same way, including piece D that you need to cut the center out of. The only difference is wall E, which is actually 2 different sizes, and when we get to that point, I will show you how it needs to go together. As I showed you for the 1/12 scale, these pieces need to be glued together, making sure all the edges match up exactly. Piece E does not match up exactly. What you want to do is make sure that the long edge is matched up on one side, but it leaves a reveal on the other side once glued together. The walls go up exactly the same. You are going to be gluing the wall marked B up against the first diagonal dotted line, and then you're going to put D up against it. Wall C goes on the other side of wall D. I'm following that dotted line and using masking tape as I go. For wall E, you want that reveal to face on the exterior of the room. So you will see the reveal pointing towards the back of the base, and the taller part of piece E will be on the inside. Make sure E is lining up flush with the inside of piece C. Now we're adding piece F up against the dotted line at the correct angle, and piece G on top as a ceiling, sitting on top of pieces E, F, and up against piece C. This is going to be your major wall construction. We're going to put the window in now. You can do the wallpaper if you like, however, wallpaper backing is not included in this kit because it is fairly easy to add wallpaper to the mat board itself. The window goes together the exact same way as it did for the 1/12 scale. I do suggest for this window using tacky glue because it is a little bit easier to work with in this scale than it is to work with Fabrifix. The tacky glue takes a little bit longer to dry, so you have more working time. I glued the window onto the acetate and then put it in place to complete the window construction. Adding the roof onto the 1/24 is also very much similar to the 1/12. I added masking tape to make a hinge effect, draped it over piece D, which is the back wall with the peak, and then allowed it to dry while adding bits of masking tape. You will find a 3/4 inch thick piece of cardstock in your 1/24 scale kit. Just cut that to size and glue it in place to complete the gluing of the two sides of the roof together. This will strengthen your roof. Now your 1/24 scale kit is complete. You have this cute little room, but it still has all the details of the larger kit. There is no reason to cover up any of the edges because it's made of mat board and there's no corrugation showing. I hope you enjoyed this kit as well. Thank you for watching the instructional video for the attic room box kit. If you do finish your kit, make sure to tag us on Instagram with Bentley House Kits. We always love to see what you create. Bye!